You're standing in a crowd, the streets of Dallas lined with people who are buzzing with excitement. It's November 22nd, 1963. The air is cool, the sky is clear, and for everyone gathered on that sunny afternoon, there's a sense of anticipation, a thrill at the thought of seeing their young, charismatic president up close. You can feel the energy. People waving flags, children climbing up on their parents' shoulders, all craning their necks to catch a glimpse of the motorcade rolling by. There's chatter, laughter, and the sense that, for a moment, the country is united. The motorcade slowly moves down Elm Street. It's a beautiful day, and in the back of the car, President John F. Kennedy is smiling, waving to the crowd. Jackie, radiant as ever, is beside him, her face full of grace. People cheer, and cameras click in rapid succession as the moment feels almost magical. But then, in an instant, something shatters that perfect image. A loud crack splits the air, shocking, it echoes down the street. For a second, there's confusion. Some think it's a car backfiring, the sound not quite registering. Then, another shot rings out, sharper this time. The crowd begins to stir, uncertain, alarmed, but the real chaos hasn't even started. A third shot follows, and that's when everything changes. The motorcade lurches forward, moving faster, but the crowd isn't moving with it. People are frozen, staring, some running for cover, some unsure of what to do, and some still caught in disbelief. Screams fill the air, but they're drowned by a deafening silence that settles over the crowd. The realization slowly dawns. Something terrible has happened. As the car speeds away, people crane their necks, trying to see what's happening. It's chaos, confusion, but one thing is clear. President Kennedy has been shot. The crowd is still, silent, as the news spreads, whispers turning into frantic rumors. The president's condition is unknown, but people are beginning to talk in hushed tones about a shooting, about a tragedy unfolding before them. The minutes that follow are filled with a sense of disbelief. It's as if time itself has paused, and the world is collectively holding its breath. Then the announcement comes. President John F. Kennedy has been shot. The news hits hard and cold, and shortly after, the worst possible news. Kennedy is dead. It's the kind of moment that no one can quite grasp. The news spreads like wildfire across the world, and suddenly every person, every conversation is marked by a single shared reality. The leader of the free world gunned down in the streets of Dallas, and with that tragedy comes a flood of questions. Was it really just a lone gunman? Or was there something deeper at play? Was this simply the act of one troubled man, or was there something darker, something more sinister behind it all? Theories begin to form almost immediately, questions that demand answers. People begin to point fingers, suggesting a cover-up, a hidden hand at work, something the public wasn't meant to see. In the weeks, months, and years that followed, the story would evolve and new layers of mystery would unfold. This wasn't just an assassination, it was the start of a search for the truth that has lasted for decades, one that has remained unsolved to this day. Was Lee Harvey Oswald the lone shooter, or was he part of a much larger conspiracy? Tonight, we begin to peel back the layers of the JFK assassination, diving into the evidence, the theories, and the unknowns that have kept this story alive for over half a century. Stay with us. You're listening to Conspiracy Theories and Cover-Ups, and the search for the truth behind the death of John F. Kennedy starts now. To fully understand the magnitude of the JFK assassination and the conspiracy theories surrounding it, we have to step back into the broader context of the time, the 1960s, a period that was marked by both optimism and tension. John F. Kennedy, at the time of his death, had only been in office for just under 3 years, but his presidency had already been defined by a series of bold moves, global confrontations, and significant cultural shifts. The United States was at the height of the Cold War, a geopolitical battle between the US and the Soviet Union. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 had brought the world to the brink of nuclear war, and Kennedy's handling of the situation had made him a hero to many, but also made him a target for those who opposed his policies, both at home and abroad. At home, the country was undergoing profound social and political changes. The civil rights movement was gaining momentum, with leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. fighting for equality and justice in the face of violent opposition. Kennedy had committed to supporting civil rights reform, but it was a battle that many Americans were resistant to. His efforts were seen by some as too radical, while others saw him as not doing enough to address the systemic racism in the country. Kennedy was also a symbol of hope and youth for many, the embodiment of the new frontier, a vision for America that was optimistic and progressive. He inspired the nation with his famous words, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." His call for public service and his promise of a bright future resonated deeply, particularly with younger generations. But with such a high profile came enemies, both within the country and abroad. Internationally, Kennedy's stance against communism put him at odds with the Soviet Union and Cuba. Domestically, his progressive policies earned him the ire of those who felt threatened by his commitment to civil rights and social change. And let's not forget the growing tensions with organized crime, which had many speculating about their involvement in events that unfolded after Kennedy's election. Kennedy's assassination did not occur in a vacuum. It was a time of immense division in the United States. The country was still reeling from the assassinations of other prominent figures, such as Malcolm X in 1965 and Martin Luther King Jr. in 1968. These events created a climate of unrest and a growing mistrust in the government and its institutions. Many began to question the official narratives of events and whether there were darker forces behind the violence that was shaking the nation. When Kennedy was killed, it wasn't just a personal loss to the American people, it was a moment that marked the loss of innocence for an entire generation. His death shattered the sense of security and stability that many had taken for granted. As the investigation into his assassination began, questions quickly emerged. Could a lone gunman really have taken down the president, or was there something more to this tragedy? Was Kennedy's death part of a larger plot, or was it simply the work of one troubled man? The official investigation into the assassination, the Warren Commission, concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. But from the very moment of Kennedy's death, cracks began to appear in this narrative. Skeptics and conspiracy theorists pounced on every detail, questioning the official story and searching for answers in the most unlikely places. The very idea that a single man armed with a rifle could bring down one of the most powerful men in the world seemed almost too incredible to believe. So, the search for answers continued. In the years that followed, the conspiracy theories would multiply, and new revelations would come to light, each one adding a new layer of mystery to an event that had already left an indelible mark on history. The assassination of John F. Kennedy is not just a tragic moment in American history, it's a puzzle that has remained unsolved for over half a century. And today, we're going to dive deep into the theories, the questions, and the mysteries that continue to surround that fateful day in Dallas. The search for the truth is far from over. Now let's get into the heart of the conspiracy. What exactly is it about the assassination of President John F. Kennedy that has led millions of people to question the official story? The Warren Commission concluded that a lone gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald, acted on his own. But for decades, many have rejected this conclusion, pointing to a number of pieces of evidence that they argue suggest there was something far more sinister at play. First, let's talk about the magic bullet theory. The Warren Commission concluded that one bullet, fired from Oswald's rifle, struck both Kennedy and Texas Governor John Connally, injuring both men. This bullet is often referred to as the magic bullet, because of the way it allegedly traveled through both men's bodies without breaking apart or causing more serious damage. According to the Commission's report, this bullet exited Kennedy's throat, then entered Connally's back, passed through his chest, broke his ribs, and exited through his wrist before lodging in his thigh. Many have found this explanation hard to believe. How could one bullet, travelling at such high speed, manage to do all this damage and emerge nearly intact? In fact, experts in ballistics have questioned whether it's even possible for a single bullet to account for all the injuries sustained by both men. This has led to the widespread belief that there may have been more than one shooter, and the single bullet theory was just an attempt to explain away conflicting evidence. Then there's the famous Zapruder film. a piece of footage taken by a man named Abraham Zapruder as the motorcade passed through Dealey Plaza. The film shows Kennedy being struck by the fatal shot, but what's crucial is the way his body reacts. According to the official version, the fatal bullet came from behind Kennedy, fired from the Texas Book Depository. But the Zapruder film shows a dramatic and distinct backward motion of Kennedy's head when he is struck. This has led many to believe that the fatal shot came from the front, not from behind. Furthermore, a number of medical professionals who were involved in the autopsy have raised questions about the official findings. Dr. James Humes, the pathologist who performed Kennedy's autopsy, later claimed that he felt pressured by government officials to rule the cause of death a single bullet wound to the head and neck, despite contradictory evidence. Additionally, autopsy photographs show inconsistencies that experts believe suggest alterations to the president's body after death. Some believe that these discrepancies indicate that evidence was deliberately tampered with to cover up the true nature of the assassination. The location of the shooters is another critical point. Officially, Lee Harvey Oswald is said to have fired from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, but many witnesses claim to have heard shots coming from other locations. Some even reported seeing smoke rising from the grassy knoll in Dealey Plaza, an area that sits to the front right of the motorcade. These accounts led to the theory that a second gunman was stationed there, perhaps to provide cover or to finish the job if Oswald failed. But perhaps the most compelling argument for a conspiracy centers on the role of Lee Harvey Oswald himself. There are many inconsistencies surrounding his background. Oswald's behavior and his connections to various intelligence agencies, including the CIA, have raised many eyebrows. Before the assassination, Oswald had defected to the Soviet Union and later returned to the US under mysterious circumstances. He was known to have been in contact with several individuals involved in covert activities, leading some to believe that he was either an unwitting pawn in a larger plot or an active participant in a conspiracy. Also, consider the strange series of events surrounding Oswald's arrest. Shortly after Kennedy was shot, Oswald was apprehended in a nearby movie theater. He was charged with the murder of a police officer, J.D. Tippit, who had been killed shortly after Kennedy. Oswald was never able to go to trial. Before he could offer any defense or explanation, he was shot and killed by Jack Ruby, a nightclub owner with alleged ties to organized crime. Ruby's actions have raised suspicions that he was silencing Oswald to prevent him from revealing something larger. Finally, the alleged involvement of the mafia cannot be ignored. There are numerous theories that suggest organized crime figures played a role in the assassination. One theory posits that the mafia was retaliating against Kennedy for his administration's crackdown on organized crime, especially through his Attorney General, Robert Kennedy. The connection between the Kennedy family and various mafia figures, including those with ties to Cuba, has led some to believe that the mob had both motive and means to orchestrate the president's death. All of this evidence, from the magic bullet to the Zapruder film to the involvement of Oswald, has led many to believe that the assassination of John F. Kennedy was not the work of a lone gunman, but rather a well-coordinated operation with multiple players involved. Whether it was a government cover-up, a mafia hit, or a mix of several factions, the truth remains elusive. And as the years have gone by, new documents, whistleblowers, and theories continue to emerge, suggesting that we have not yet seen the full picture. As compelling as the evidence for a conspiracy in the JFK assassination may seem, it is also met with a strong counter-narrative from critics, experts, and skeptics who uphold the official story, that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. These critics argue that much of the evidence cited by conspiracy theorists is either misinterpreted or exaggerated, and they challenge the idea that a grand conspiracy could have been orchestrated without leaving definitive evidence behind. One of the most significant rebuttals comes from the field of ballistics and forensic analysis. The magic bullet theory, which has been the subject of much scrutiny, is still supported by some experts who argue that the single bullet explanation is not only plausible, but also physically possible. Critics of the conspiracy theories point out that the bullet's trajectory, while seemingly improbable, could have followed a path that is consistent with the laws of physics. The entry and exit points, they argue, make sense given the positions of both Kennedy and Connolly at the time. The argument here is that while the idea of one bullet causing all of the injuries might feel counterintuitive, it is not an impossibility, especially when considering the range and caliber of the rifle Oswald used. As for the Zapruder film and the idea that the fatal shot came from the front, many experts in film analysis and physics have weighed in. They assert that the backward motion of Kennedy's head can be explained by the nature of the bullet's impact and the physics of the human body. A shot to the back of the head, they argue, could cause a jerking motion that may appear as though the president was struck from the front. In this view, the backward head movement isn't evidence of a second shooter, but simply the result of the fatal shot's force. Critics of the conspiracy theories also point out that while it is tempting to interpret inconsistencies in the medical records or autopsy reports as evidence of a cover-up, the discrepancies could also be explained by simple procedural mistakes, confusion, or the chaotic nature of the situation. The medical professionals who performed Kennedy's autopsy were under extreme pressure in a fast-paced and uncertain environment, and some argue that it is not unusual for errors to occur under such circumstances. For example, the fact that the autopsy photographs appear to show differences between the entry and exit wounds could be attributed to the high level of trauma the president's body sustained, rather than any deliberate alteration of evidence. When it comes to the claims about multiple shooters, skeptics argue that eyewitness testimony, while compelling, is notoriously unreliable. Witnesses in Dealey Plaza reported seeing smoke coming from the grassy knoll, but there are also reports of people hearing shots from other directions. The fact that so many conflicting testimonies exist only serves to muddy the waters, they claim, and is not enough to conclusively prove the presence of a second gunman. In the chaotic aftermath of the assassination, it's entirely possible that people misheard, misinterpreted, or imagined what they thought they saw or heard. And then there's the case of Lee Harvey Oswald himself. Critics of the conspiracy theories argue that Oswald's background and his apparent defection to the Soviet Union do not make him a tool of the CIA or a pawn in some larger plot. Instead, they argue that Oswald was a troubled, isolated individual with a desire for recognition, and his actions on the day of Kennedy's assassination were the result of personal grievances and ideological beliefs. According to this viewpoint, Oswald was simply a lone, disgruntled man who took matters into his own hands and shot the president. As for Oswald's death at the hands of Jack Ruby, skeptics assert that Ruby's motives were likely personal and unrelated to any grand conspiracy. They argue that Ruby, a nightclub owner with known ties to the underworld, was simply attempting to silence Oswald to prevent him from speaking to the press or becoming a martyr. Ruby was known to be deeply emotional about the Kennedy assassination and had been openly upset by it in the days leading up to the shooting. Some claim that Ruby's actions were not a sign of a cover-up, but simply the actions of a man who was outraged by the assassination and took matters into his own hands. Finally, critics of the conspiracy theories point out that the sheer scale of the alleged cover-up is almost impossible to comprehend. They argue that the number of people required to maintain a conspiracy of this magnitude, ranging from government officials to medical professionals to law enforcement agents, would make it highly unlikely that such a cover-up could remain intact for over 50 years. If there were truly a conspiracy, they ask, why have no whistleblowers come forward with definitive proof? Why have no hard, irrefutable documents emerged to confirm that JFK's death was the result of a coordinated effort? For those who support the lone gunman theory, these arguments remain compelling. They believe that the inconsistencies and contradictions in the conspiracy theories can be explained by human error, the passage of time, and the natural tendency for people to look for deeper meanings when confronted with a traumatic event. The official story, they argue, may not be perfect, but it is supported by the available evidence, and that should be enough. In the end, the debate continues, and for every piece of evidence that bolsters the case for a conspiracy, there is an equally persuasive argument from those who believe Oswald acted alone. It's a case where definitive answers are hard to come by, and the mystery remains unresolved. But perhaps, like so many conspiracies, it's the questions that keep the story alive. And with that, we turn our attention to some of the more speculative and fringe ideas surrounding the JFK assassination. The JFK assassination conspiracy theory has endured for over half a century, gaining traction with each passing year. But why does it continue to captivate so many people, even those who weren't alive when it happened? What is it about this particular conspiracy that resonates with the collective psyche of modern society, and what does it say about the cultural, political, and social implications of such a theory? At its core, the conspiracy surrounding JFK's death taps into a deep-seated mistrust of authority and government. The very idea that the United States government, an institution that is supposed to serve and protect its citizens, could orchestrate the assassination of a sitting president, especially one as beloved and charismatic as John F. Kennedy, strikes at the heart of this mistrust. For many, the theory offers a glimpse into the darker side of politics, where power and influence can manipulate history in ways that the public is never meant to understand. The assassination, after all, occurred during a time of heightened tension, both domestically and internationally. The Cold War was in full swing, and the threat of nuclear conflict with the Soviet Union loomed large. The civil rights movement was beginning to gain momentum, and societal shifts were taking place across the country. In this charged political climate, it's not hard to see why so many would struggle to accept that a single deranged loner, Lee Harvey Oswald, could have taken down such an iconic and pivotal figure like JFK. The sense of national trauma was immense, and the official narrative offered by the Warren Commission simply didn't seem to satisfy the emotional and psychological need for justice and closure. For many, the conspiracy theory also speaks to a broader sense of disillusionment with the government's ability to be transparent or to act in the best interest of its people. This sense of disillusionment has only grown stronger in the decades since Kennedy's death, as revelations about the CIA's covert operations, the Watergate scandal, and the wars in Vietnam and Iraq have shaken the public's faith in their leaders. When governments, organizations, and institutions fail to live up to their promises of accountability and truth, conspiracy theories often fill the void, offering alternative narratives that challenge the mainstream version of events. The JFK assassination also taps into a cultural fascination with secret societies, shadowy figures, and hidden agendas. Popular media, from films to books to documentaries, has long explored the theme of a powerful few manipulating events for their own benefit, often at the expense of the many. These stories, whether fictional or based in reality, have fostered a culture of skepticism and suspicion, where nothing is ever quite as it seems. The idea that a group of elites might orchestrate an event like the assassination, whether out of fear of Kennedy's policies, a desire for power, or some other hidden motive, plays into these cultural tropes, which are deeply ingrained in the collective consciousness. Moreover, the continuing debate over the JFK assassination reflects a deeper societal tension between the desire for truth and the difficulty of ever fully understanding or accepting the truth. We live in a world where information is abundant, yet truth is often elusive. We are surrounded by narratives, competing facts, and opinions that challenge the very notion of objective reality. In this environment, it becomes easier to accept alternative explanations, even when they may not be supported by hard evidence. The JFK conspiracy theory is just one example of how human nature, our need for answers and meaning, can shape the way we interpret the world around us. The idea of a grand conspiracy provides a narrative that gives people a sense of control, as if they are privy to hidden knowledge that others are not. On a psychological level, the assassination conspiracy serves as a coping mechanism for many. It offers an explanation for the inexplicable. Kennedy's death was sudden, violent, and traumatic. His assassination marked the end of an era of idealism, youth, and hope for many Americans. It left a scar on the national consciousness, and for some, the conspiracy theory provides a way to deal with that grief. If Kennedy's death wasn't the result of a lone random act of violence, but rather a carefully orchestrated plot, then there might still be a reason behind it. The lack of closure in the official story fuels the need for alternative theories, ones that promise answers, even if they are unsettling. Socially, the JFK assassination conspiracy has had a profound impact on public discourse. It is a touchstone for broader conversations about the role of government, the media, and the public in shaping political events. The theories surrounding Kennedy's death continue to be debated not just by armchair theorists, but also by historians, journalists, and even political leaders. The very fact that this conspiracy has persisted for so long speaks to its cultural power. It has become part of the fabric of American identity, woven into the stories we tell about the government and its relationship with the people. The continued interest in the JFK assassination and its conspiracy theories is also a reflection of a broader societal shift. We live in a time when skepticism, distrust, and cynicism toward authority figures have become more prevalent than ever before. The JFK assassination serves as a symbol for these feelings, a moment in history when the power structures of the world seemed to come together in ways that left the public in the dark. This sense of uncertainty and mistrust continues to fuel a search for truth, even when that truth may be elusive. In this way, the conspiracy theory surrounding JFK's assassination transcends the event itself. It speaks to our collective fears, our need for justice, and our desire to understand the forces that shape our world. And it continues to capture our imagination, keeping the debate alive and well for generations to come. Now let's venture into the murky, speculative waters of the JFK assassination conspiracy, where things get even stranger and more uncertain. This is where the fringe theories and far-reaching ideas come into play, those narratives that venture far beyond the official story and the well-worn paths of the more mainstream conspiracies. One of the more unconventional perspectives revolves around the idea that JFK's assassination was not just a political event, but rather part of a much larger, cosmic-scale power struggle. Some conspiracy theorists suggest that the assassination may have been influenced by forces far beyond the political elite, the notion that JFK was a target due to his efforts to curtail the power of shadowy, secretive organizations that operate outside of the government's purview. In this theory, the conspirators may not be just a handful of CIA operatives or anti-Castro exiles, but instead a global network of secret societies whose influence extends beyond the reach of any single government. A popular, though unsubstantiated theory in this vein involves the Freemasons, the Bilderberg Group, or even the Illuminati. These groups, which are often implicated in a range of other conspiracy theories, are believed by some to have had a vested interest in removing Kennedy from office. The theory suggests that his policies, particularly his stance on nuclear disarmament, his approach to the Soviet Union, and his opposition to the deep state's military-industrial complex, were seen as threats to the power structures of these clandestine organizations. The belief here is that the secretive elites were in fact pulling the strings, orchestrating not just his assassination, but a vast global conspiracy aimed at shaping world events to fit their vision. Then, there's the bizarre suggestion that the assassination may have involved some kind of supernatural or extraterrestrial influence. These ideas, while far from mainstream, do exist and suggest that Kennedy's interest in UFOs, alien technology, and secret government projects may have led to his death. Some proponents of this theory argue that Kennedy's public statements about extraterrestrial life, including his alleged desire to disclose information about UFOs to the public, put him at odds with powerful groups who wished to keep the truth about extraterrestrials and advanced technology hidden. In this line of thinking, Kennedy's assassination was not just about politics, it was about protecting a cosmic secret. These ideas are often fueled by various UFO sightings, reports, and other unexplained phenomena that some believe are tied to shadow government projects that Kennedy may have tried to expose. Among those who entertain such fringe ideas, there's also a theory that JFK was taken out because of his decision to challenge the Federal Reserve System. JFK is often cited by some as having taken bold steps toward diminishing the power of the Federal Reserve, particularly with his issuance of Executive Order 1110, which authorized the U.S. Treasury to issue silver certificates. These theorists argue that Kennedy's actions were perceived as a direct challenge to the banking elite, including the Federal Reserve, whose powerful influence is widely believed to shape the country's economy. For some, the assassination represents not just a political assassination, but a strategic strike to preserve the financial control of a hidden global power. According to this view, Kennedy was trying to take back control of the country's monetary policy, a move that threatened not just domestic interests, but also global financial power. There are also those who suggest that there is much more to the story than simply who pulled the trigger. Some conspiracy theorists point to the idea that the assassination was staged as a false flag operation. In this interpretation, the murder of JFK was intended to rally the American public, unite the nation under a new leader, and propel the US into a new phase of geopolitical strategy. Those who promote this view argue that the assassination could have been orchestrated not just by rogue actors within the government, but as part of a larger plan to shape public opinion and drive policy changes under the guise of national mourning. Even more speculative is the idea that the whole event was a preordained ritual or ceremony. Some conspiracy theorists propose that the assassination of JFK was part of a larger occult-based conspiracy, perhaps linked to ancient secret societies or rituals that trace back centuries. This idea is rooted in esoteric beliefs that suggest certain major events throughout history, such as assassinations or power shifts, are part of a ritualistic process that aligns with larger cosmic forces. The theory argues that the timing and manner of Kennedy's assassination were no coincidence, with some proponents suggesting that JFK's death was a symbolic event that could mark a sacrifice to seal an agreement between world powers or to bring about a specific geopolitical outcome. There are even more outlandish ideas that stretch the limits of logic and reason. For instance, a very fringe group of conspiracy theorists holds that JFK's death was not an assassination at all, but rather a staged event in which he was secretly removed from power to avoid an imminent threat from a global catastrophe, such as nuclear war or a cataclysmic event predicted by apocalyptic visions. According to these theorists, JFK's assassination was actually a cover-up for his being whisked away to safety by the government, allowing him to escape the dangers of a world teetering on the brink of chaos. While highly speculative and unsupported by evidence, these ideas contribute to the broader tapestry of mystery surrounding JFK's death. And then there's the most fantastical theory, that the JFK assassination was not just a tragic event in history, but a massive cover-up of something far more unusual, perhaps involving time travel, parallel universes, or a hidden hand that continues to alter the course of history. Though wildly imaginative and unsupported, such theories flourish in the world of fringe conspiracy circles, where anything seems possible and everything is subject to reinterpretation. As bizarre as these ideas may seem, they all tie back to the central mystery, the question of who killed JFK and why. The fringes of the JFK assassination theory may be strange and far-reaching, but they speak to the enduring power of this event in our collective consciousness. The desire to find an answer, no matter how strange or implausible, is a testament to the human need for closure and understanding in the face of the most confounding and tragic events in history. As we draw this episode to a close, let's take a moment to step back and reflect on what we've uncovered. The assassination of President John F. Kennedy remains one of the most debated and mysterious events in modern history. While the official narrative points to a lone gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald, there are countless theories that argue otherwise. From the idea of a CIA cover-up to suspicions of mafia involvement, to the far-reaching theories that involve shadow governments and secret societies, the theories are as varied as they are compelling. At the heart of it all is the simple, unsettling question: why? Why was JFK, a sitting US president, cut down in his prime? Why did so many seemingly powerful figures and institutions have so much to gain from his death? And why does the conspiracy around his assassination continue to captivate people more than half a century later? The mystery of JFK's death taps into something deep within the human psyche, a thirst for answers, a desire to uncover hidden truths, and a need to understand the power structures that shape our world. This is not just about one man's death, but about the intersection of power, politics, and the hidden forces that might operate behind the scenes. The endless speculation surrounding the assassination speaks to a much broader theme in conspiracy culture. The suspicion that there is always more beneath the surface than we're being told. But in the end, what's most compelling about the JFK assassination theory is that it leaves us with more questions than answers. Was it really a lone gunman, or was this a coordinated effort by various factions with their own motives? Who were the true architects of this plot, and what did they hope to achieve by silencing Kennedy? As we wrap up this exploration into one of the darkest chapters of American history, it's clear that the JFK assassination conspiracy theory is not just a single narrative. It's a reflection of our collective fears about power, secrecy, and the forces that shape our world without us ever truly knowing. And while the truth may still be elusive, it's that very uncertainty that keeps the conspiracy alive. The story of JFK's death is far from over, and for many, the search for answers will continue, fueled by speculation, new evidence, and the belief that one day the truth will finally come to light. Before we conclude, let me take a moment to give you a sneak peek into our next episode. We'll be delving into one of the most mind-bending topics imaginable: time travel secrets. Could the government be hiding the key to time travel in classified archives? What could be locked away in these so-called chrono-archives, and why are they so well guarded? We'll explore these questions and more as we dive into the enigmatic world of time travel, government secrets, and the possibility that the ability to manipulate time may be closer to reality than we think. So stay tuned for our next episode, because the mystery doesn't stop here. Thank you for listening to Conspiracy Theories and Cover-Ups. Until next time, keep questioning, keep seeking the truth, and keep your eyes wide open to the secrets hiding in plain sight.